Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I have for you Good Night, IRENE by James Michael Ullman. And you can see this is one of the Inner Sanctum mysteries published by Simon & Schuster, copyright 1965, with a jacket by the enormously talented Lawrence Ratskin, who did a lot of mystery covers. And I hope you can see that okay without the glare. So interesting thing is, like a lot of the older mystery imprints, Inner Sanctum would award sort of a book of the year for a first mystery by a writer. And it turns out that Ullman's first book, The Neon Haystack, won that award the previous year. So this is Ullman's second book, but the first one by him that I have read. And I will confess that it was really the title that got me. There's, like, I almost feel like I know that title from somewhere, or, am I just thinking of Bugs Bunny, Good Night Nurse? I don't know. I just think the title is great. And when I read the first couple of pages, I saw that it was narrated in first person, which I always really enjoy reading. There's just something easy to read about a first person narrative. And I will also say, as a sometime writer, that it's also pretty easy to write. Writing in first person is easy as far as writing goes, whereas writing in third person is torture. It's so much more difficult. So, if I were ever one of those people who turned out a book a year, I would absolutely have to have a first person narration, because it's just too much work to do third person. But that's not to say that it's a cop-out. It's a very good way to tell a story, and a lot of people really like it. And sometimes when I've been through kind of a difficult tome, I will purposely look for a book that is told in first person, because I know it will be easy to read. So let me just tell you a little bit about the author. There's really not a lot that I know. Ullman was a newspaperman who then took the world of the newsroom, the newspaper office, and used it as his background. And his narrator, his protagonist, is, in this book, Pete Ames, who is basically just a cub reporter. He is, he's just starting out, trying to build his career. Curious thing is, this book doesn't have a location. It's not set in any major city that's ever mentioned. We know it's a city, but we don't know which one. And I think that's a little bit of a curious choice on the author's part, because I feel like a lot of readers like to be, including myself, like to be grounded in a location. But I guess it could be said too that if you don't name the city, then it becomes a place that your readership can imagine or can apply to their favorite city or what have you. The only city mentioned in here really is Chicago. And that's not until the end of the book, but that's not the setting of the book. So as our book starts, Pete Ames is hanging out in the newsroom with a bunch of, other, cynical reporters. And he's on what they call squawk duty. And I had never heard this term before. Basically, a squawker is someone who walks into a newspaper office and says to the receptionist, "I've got a story for you." And, they send the reporter down, and, 99 times out of 100, it's, something stupid like, a dog peed on my lawn, or, my neighbor is hanging her laundry out to dry at hours that are inconsistent with the city code, usually just nonsense. But a woman shows up with a packet, a manila packet of documentation, and she wants to tell her story. So Pete Ames says to her, well, sort of, what's it about? And she says, well, I'm not going to tell you. I'll only talk to so-and-so, who is your boss. And I want $5,000 for this story. So Pete, being kind of, green, says, we're never going to pay you $5,000 for a story. Like, just don't even get your hopes up. And so she leaves. And when his managing editor gets back, he tells Pete, what you did is the very opposite of what a good newspaper man does. You should not have let her go without getting information about her, sitting her down, like prying the story out of her. Like, she may not have wanted to tell it to you, but you could have asked good questions to kind of get a sense of what it's all about. And he fires poor Pete Ames, teaches him a lesson. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book is, I guess I kind of like to read about younger people getting their feet wet and learning the ropes of their trade. Early in my career, I know I certainly made mistakes, many of them. And I was fortunate to have some really good managers who could sit me down and say, no, this is not what you do for the following reasons, and here's a better way to do it. Or if I was having a sort of editorial problem, one manager of mine in particular was really good with sitting down and brainstorming solutions to how to get the best out of the author. And so I felt sort of avuncular towards Pete Ames, and I wanted him to kind of dig himself out of the hole that he had dug himself into. Part of it, I think, is maybe just getting older. I've been working on this psychology book about older adults, and there's this concept called generativity, meaning that as you get to be a certain age, your priorities shift a little bit. It becomes less about, making your way in your own career and more about sharing what you know with younger people so that they can kind of take your experience forward and learn from it. And I think I'm kind of in the generativity aspect of my career. And I think maybe that's why I felt so, protective of Pete Ames. He made an honest mistake and he screwed up, and he should have a second chance. I was uncomfortably reminded of, mistakes in social media where one person says or does the wrong thing or gets caught on video in a moment of stupidity and they're fired instantly, can never get a job again. Their name is anathema. That whole cancel culture thing is just, horrible, I think, because we all make mistakes and we should have a little bit more sympathy for people who make them, especially when they're young and inexperienced. So, how do I tell you a little bit more about the plot without giving too much away? The woman, and this happens early in the book, the woman who showed up to squawk with her documentation, her unseen documentation, ends up dead that same afternoon. And the book becomes about trying to figure out not only who killed her, but also what was the content of that envelope. And, was it something really, hot or controversial, or was it something that had to do with blackmail or, some other unknown nefarious purpose? And so it's kind of a double mystery to be solved. And as Pete is going about trying to solve this, he kind of falls afoul of a private investigator who's not very nice, who, let's just say, he doesn't meet a great end either. And what ultimately happens is something that I really like in a mystery, and that's when, towards the end of the book, the solution is revealed, and you as the reader think, oh, that's good. That makes sense. I can see sort of the brilliance of these deductions and how they got to the murderer. And then you find out that all that deducing is wrong and that the murderer is actually somebody else. So it's kind of like a big fake out. And I admire that because a book has to be very, very well plotted for that kind of ending to happen and to work well. And that is what happens here. So if you like that thing, I think this book has your name written all over it. There's an interesting thing that happens here in that because it's written in first person, the solution, to get to the solution, the author has to shift viewpoints. And he does that by going into a Q&A format, which was the way that this particular writer resolved the problem that he had with the first person narrator trying to explain everything that happened in the climax and how everybody got to their deductions. And I'm in no way criticizing that because I think that's sort of a writer's job to figure out how to tell a story, how to wrap it all up, and a shifting viewpoint is totally fine when it makes sense within the narrative, and I thought it did make sense here. So between the puzzling plot, the likable narrator, the easy to read first person narration, the setting of newspapers, a world that is, almost gone but not quite, I just found myself really enjoying this book and wanting to read more by the author. And so I just finished up a pretty big project, and I said, I'm going to treat myself to a new book. So I went online and found a copy of The Neon Haystack, which I'm going to read, at some point in the coming year or two. Who's to say? I never know what will be next. So that's what I have got for you. Again, Good Night, IRENE, by James Michael Ullman. And give it a try. And if you like it, let us know what you think by leaving a comment below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.